So yesterday, as some of you may know, there was a shooting at a synagogue in a Jewish community in Pittsburgh, and 11 people were killed, and 6 people, including 4 police officers, were injured. And so within the last week, we've had 2 African American men killed. I think it was in a restaurant or maybe a store, a grocery store. We've had the pipe bombs sent to various Democrats, and now we have an anti-Semitic mass murder. So people are, some people are starting, and some people are continuing to say that our national discourse needs to chill out a bit, and all the kind of riled up speech against this group or that group, criticizing this person or that person, needs to stop. I've thought this for a long time. Some people like the drama and the excitement of that. It's really kind of reality show TV that keeps you wondering what the next episode is going to be. Anyway, I found this very beautiful article on the New York Times, and I think all of us are needing a little bit of, let's have some good news for a while. Yeah, so we can see another aspect of human beings besides ignorance, anger, and attachment. So this is, it was entitled America and Judaism at its Best. And it was written by Lev Golinkin. And because you know that the guy, Bowers, who went into the synagogue, he said before he entered that HIAS, H-I-A-S, it stands for Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, but it actually turned into human. You'll see as the article goes on. Because before he entered the synagogue, he said, all the Jews need to be killed, and that this organization is bringing all sorts of invaders into the country to destroy his people, and so he felt the need to take action. And so he did, and he went in with an assault weapon of some type. Yeah, the kind that still hasn't been banned even after the 50-something people were killed in Las Vegas and all the other shootings that have happened. So he said, members and supporters of the Jewish community at a candlelight vigil for those, that was the caption for a photograph. Okay, so he says, for many years I have wished more Americans would know about HIAS. Now I am heartbroken by why they will. The man charged with killing 11 people on Saturday at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh posted a message online just a few hours before the massacre. HIAS likes to bring invaders in that kill our people. I can't sit by and watch my people get slaughtered. Screw your optics, I'm going in. This is what this guy posted on a media site that is very well liked by the alt-right called Gap. So I want to read this rather than paraphrase it, because how he says things is quite beautiful. Many Americans are now wondering what HIAS is and who it brings to America. I first heard of those 4 letters in 1989 when I was 9 years old and my family fled anti-Semitism in the Soviet Union. So I remember this, and the anti-Semitism in the Soviet Union has been going on hundreds of years. But, even in the 60s, we were hearing stories of it. And I know Jewish organizations were trying to get people out. I think a lot of them to Israel, but it kind of continued after that. Okay, at the time, we didn't know what HIAS stood for, Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, or that it had been helping migrant Jews since 1881. Yeah. All we knew, this is his family in Russia, was to head for the main train station in Vienna, where, rumor had it, people who worked for this strange acronym would help. For the next 6 months, HIAS became the most important entity in my life. It was HIAS workers who were pulling us and tens of thousands of others off the trains in Austria. HIAS that got us settled in refugee camps. HIAS that rallied American Jewish communities to sponsor refugees in the United States. HIAS will help, I silently intoned as a child, as we hitchhiked like phantoms across Austrian roads and went through awful asylum interviews at the American embassy. HIAS was what remained when the rest of your life had disintegrated, when there was no money, no way to communicate, no going back. Because once they left the Soviet Union, they couldn't go back, no way. HIAS was what kept you tethered to the world when you became a ghost, yet weren't yet ready to die. 2 decades after I came to America, HIAS found itself at the crossroads. For the first time in memory, there weren't large numbers of Jews in need of resettlement. That was, because the Jews are always getting kicked out of one country or the other. Yeah. It was other people who needed help, children fleeing gang violence in Central America, victims of wars in East Asia, and most of all, refugees from the wars in the Middle East, people who had endured horrors that make my family's experience seem like a luxury cruise in comparison. Some felt it was inappropriate for HIAS, a Jewish group, to devote resources to aiding Muslims. HIAS, to its eternal credit, disagreed. Okay? As Mark Hetfield, the president and chief executive of HIAS, once told me, we decided to help not because they are Jewish, but because we are Jewish. So I have to pause here, because this is the way I was raised, This really hits upon my conditioning as a youngster. Yeah. That is what you do, when you come from a people that have been persecuted, then you reach out and you help. And there's no other way to do it. So on October 19th, HIAS organized a National Refugee Shabbat. The Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society became simply HIAS to reflect the fact that about 90% of its clients were no longer Jewish. Yeah. Offices sprang up in Kenya, Greece, Venezuela, and Chad. The group engaged the same American Jewish communities that had adopted families like mine. Today, more than 400 Jewish communities, including Pittsburgh's, have committed themselves to helping refugees. And after Donald Trump became president, HIAS became one of the most vigorous and vocal opponents of the White House's attempt to ban refugees. What does HIAS mean today? To refugees around the world, it's becoming an international word for hope, in dozens of tongues and for numerous faiths. To me, it symbolizes America and Judaism at its best. And it's easy to see how HIAS stands for everything white supremacists hate: tolerance, understanding, and empathy. And who does HIAS bring to this country? I could easily rattle off a list of refugee all-stars, celebrity actors, Olympic athletes, path-breaking inventors, acclaimed musicians and writers and artists. You might not know they were once refugees, but I can assure you, you know who they are. But that would be missing the point. Hayes didn't help them because they could sing or write code. It helped them because they needed help. The majority of Hayes's clients weren't famous or aren't famous, and while you probably don't know their names, they're part of your world nonetheless. They are people who used to be merchants and goat herders and professors. Some have stayed in their fields in America, many did not. They drive your taxis, dress your wounds, clean your houses. They watch over your businesses while you sleep. And they know that the United States can give you a new life, but also know it comes with a cost. 2 weeks ago, I had a chance to reflect on just who it was, or who it is, that Hayes brings to this country after another Hayes client passed away, my mother. Mom, like many older immigrants, had discovered firsthand that there's a steep admission price to America. For 30 years, she had been a doctor in Ukraine, but the language barrier made that impossible when she came to America. And also, she probably would have had to totally redo her education because the U.S. doesn't accept degrees from abroad in many fields. The first few years were awful. She felt she went from being a physician to being useless. It wasn't until she began working as a night security guard that she finally felt happy again. Can you believe that? Somebody with her skills? Immigration left my family strewn across 3 continents, which meant that more than half of those attending Mom's funeral were native-born Americans. And so on a sunny fall afternoon, I watched a small caravan of Russian and English speakers wind across a patch of forest next to the office park in suburban New Jersey that Mom used to guard. I watched these people honor Mom's last wish, to scatter her ashes at the place where she was reborn in America. I watched them celebrate the life of an immigrant who had every reason to be bitter at her lot in this country, and yet loved it and worked in it with honor. And I silently thanked Hayes for the strength and the grace it imports to America. That is what Hayes stands for. That's who Hayes brings to this country. So I read some of the comments, that people write, and, people were so grateful for this kind of article, that really unpacks something and shows you the good side of Americans. Yeah, the thought just dawned in my mind, I wonder if my ancestors were helped by them. I have no idea. Yeah, that could be. Anyway, and so many of the people who wrote, the readers who wrote, were immigrants who came and who just expressed so much thanks, not just for Hayes, but for all the Americans who helped them come to this country and then get settled in this country and so on. And that's, when you see what the history of this country is, that everybody except the Native Americans were immigrants, and even though recently they took the phrase that we are a nation of immigrants out of some kind of something that they wrote, we are a nation of immigrants. Yeah, and I think that that's what makes us really unique in the world. And as I've said before, that's what makes me proud to be an American when I stand in that line coming into the country and you see so many different kinds of people. And, and so the fact that so many different kinds of people can live together and help each other is really something remarkable. And I think that's what the country stands for. And that's what we need to come back to. Yeah. And really emphasize that. Yeah. And And certainly our Buddhist values support that. Yeah? Somebody else who's crying, who's an immigrant.
So I wanted to talk about also something beautiful, a bit of good news, that the caravan of immigrants that left from Honduras and Guatemala, as they're advancing through some cities in Mexico, I read a story about how in those cities when they are arriving, that Mexican people are receiving them with food and clothes, and opening their hearts to them and making them feel welcome and comfortable. And so I thought that that was a beautiful gesture of solidarity.
And for years, since trains have been coming through Mexico with immigrants from Central America trying to get here, the Mexicans, often, even if the trains aren't stopping, they will throw water and food to the people to catch, as the trains are going by, so that they have something to drink and eat. And when I was teaching in Mexico some years back, I met somebody who was involved with that. It was just a homegrown movement. The people in her town did that. And I made a donation on behalf of the Abbey to them to get food and drink to those people. Yeah? Okay.